Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship podcast recap of a 31-12 beatdown by the Texas Longhorns against the Michigan Wolverines. It was a housing of Michigan in the Big House, Eric, and we thought maybe this Michigan team isn't quite up to the standard of certainly the defending national champions last year, but Texas left no doubt. They come in, they end a 16-game winning streak of Michigan. They end a 23-game home winning streak. The Wolverines were 41-3 at home in their last 44 games, and they were never in this game from the beginning, Eric.
Yeah, Chip, I think you hit the nail on the head. When you talk about from start to finish, just a resounding victory for Texas, people will probably point to this win and say, oh, well, it wasn't the same Michigan team of before. They didn't have the players from last year, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Cormick, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Chip, what I would say to that is this isn't the same Texas team from a year ago. Last year, this time, week 2, it was a feeling of hope going into Alabama. Like, we hope that year 3 of Steve Sarkisian, this team has taken the next step. This year, entering this game, it was a feeling of knowing. It was you don't want to again, say it was a certainty, Chip, but I think there's a reason why Texas entered this game as 7.5-point favorites. Everything was very clear. You take a look at the Texas team that played last week against Colorado State, a resounding victory. Now you flip forward 1 week later, a resounding victory with different contributors coming in. And I know we're going to talk about it, but in my mind, that's the sign. That's indicative of this being a different Texas team and one that you can truly believe in.
Yeah, and Quinn Ewers, they take the ball. Texas takes the ball. They don't normally do that, but they wanted the wind at their back in the fourth quarter. Steve Sarkisian anticipating a close game. They take the ball and they convert 3 massive third downs on the drive and nearly converted a third. It gets a 24-yard touchdown pass from Quinn Ewers to DeAndre Moore, gets called back for Cam Williams holding. It was a questionable holding call. Steve Sarkisian said he's got to look at the replay. Tough first drive for Cam Williams. He had a couple of false starts and the holding call. Then Bert Auburn misses a 43-yard field goal wide right, but it didn't seem to faze Texas at all. They just came over to the sideline, said, hey, we got a lot more in the tank. Let's go. And the Texas defense had an answer for everything that Michigan threw at them. We knew Michigan wanted to pound the football. Texas holds them to under 100 yards rushing, again, in their own house, 23 carries.
80 yards?
80 yards,
yeah.
3.5 yards per carry. And this Texas defense is playing with a new sense of confidence. I'm not going to say they forced 3 turnovers because Colston Loveland was trying to transfer the ball from one hand to the other, and his knee knocked the ball loose. But they did come up with a couple interceptions, a tipped ball interception. Malik Muhammad tips it. Andrew Makuba with the interception, and then Derek Williams with the diving interception in the second half. 3 turnovers by Michigan. Texas converts those turnovers into 10 points. And again, Eric, it was 24-3 at halftime, and you just had the sense that there was no coming back for Michigan. It ends up being 31-12. Michigan doesn't score until the final, minute, garbage time. It was impressive.
Chip, you talk about getting the feeling that the game was over at halftime. To me, nothing was more indicative, and I'd be curious if you felt the same way. When Michigan in the third quarter got down within they got inside of Texas territory, and on a 3rd and 5, which conceivably you think would be 4-down territory, you're down multiple scores. They go with Alex Orji, and they get the QB run. Texas snuffs it out, and they have to settle for a 52-yard field goal. In my mind, Sharon Moore may as well just had a white flag and just waved it right there from his sideline and said, hey, we concede. If that's the call you have, and I'm not necessarily making this about Sharon Moore, I just think it's a 2-part factor. One, it's indicative of just how inept Michigan's offense was, and that's a byproduct of Texas defense, but also just the fact that Michigan couldn't get anything going. So that's a byproduct of what you said, that defensive improvement all the way around. Again, last week we saw the secondary shut down a very potent Colorado State passing attack. This week, holding Michigan, as you said, 23 carries for 80 yards. And when Michigan tried to play their game, those 3rd and shorts, we're going to pound the football. Texas's defense had an answer. That's impressive, Chip.
Yeah, and Quinn Ewers on the offensive side, Quinn Ewers outstanding in this game, 24 of 36 for 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. Probably should have been a 4th touchdown, but no interceptions. And then your guy Gunnar Helm. Are you kidding me, Eric? He's targeted 7 times, 7 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, no, listen, when you talk about Gunnar Helm, right? And we kind of laugh when you say, you know, my guy, obviously someone who I've kind of written about a fair amount since I've been on the beat. But Chip, in all seriousness, who could have expected this from Gunnar Helm last year or 2 years ago? A guy who was primarily a blocking back, primarily someone who came in, you know, Jatavian Sanders got the shine, got the glory, especially Chip as a tight end, right? Think about it. You know, no one wants to necessarily be an extension of the offensive line at tight end. You know, guys want to catch balls and make plays. Gunnar Helm's entire career prior to really this year was being primarily a blocking back. And, you know, we all know the story. Before last season, he goes to Jeff Banks and says, I've been busting my behind. I want a shot. What do I have to do? He works on himself. He works on his body, becomes more athletic. Again, no one's going to confuse him for a burner, Chip, but he looks like a guy who's very capable of receiving threat in this offense. And that just adds more versatility, something that Steve Sarkisian really emphasized last year, how versatile the team was. Well, I think we're starting to see that versatility this year.
Yeah. I mean, you get it was truly impressive, that first drive. Even though they come away with no points, they converted 3rd and 13 with a 33-yard completion, Quinn Ewers to Isaiah Bond, a 3rd and 5 with a 7-yard pass from Ewers to Isaiah Bond, 3rd and 11. That was the 24-yard touchdown pass that got called back. But they converted a 3rd and 10 with a 20-yard pass from Ewers to Matt Golden. I mean, it was impressive. And whenever they needed a big play, it seemed like they turned to Gunnar Helm. There was a 2nd and 15 play where he had a 22-yard reception that extended a touchdown drive. So it felt like Quinn Ewers was seeing the field. There were a couple plays where the running backs went the wrong way, and they ended up with Quinn Ewers, you know, taking some lost yardage plays, including one near the goal line. But really, when you stack this up, Eric, the first 5 drives that Texas had, 13 plays, 51 yards, 6 plays, 56 yards, 12 plays, 76 yards, 10 plays, 29 yards. And they doubled Michigan in terms of time of possession, 18 minutes to 9 to start this game. It was just really, really impressive. You know, I mean, hard to nitpick. You know, you're going to nitpick Cam Williams, maybe the 43-yard field goal missed by Bert Auburn, but that was into the wind, by the way.
Yeah, Chip, I mean, you said tough to nitpick, like you said. And it's tough because maybe against a greater opponent, and I hesitate to say that because it's a top 10 team, right? Let's not bury the lead. Texas made the number 10 team in the nation look like an inept opponent. But with that being said, maybe if this is a college football playoff game or you're playing, you know, Georgia, you got a game you're going to have in a couple weeks, you can't have the Cam Williams 3 false starts, right? You can't have those things. But again, all things considered, Chip, 111,170 fans. That's the largest crowd that Texas has ever played a football game in front of, home, road, or otherwise. It is a lot to expect of perfection. It's a lot to expect from your team, but just how resounding of a victory this was. You talked about the drives, and another thing that, you know, post game we talked with Steve Sarkisian. He talked about Quinn Ewers, right? When some of those little things that you could nitpick on happened, his demeanor, especially offensively, his calm demeanor, keeping the guys composed. That, and Chip, you probably would be best to attest to this, that rubs off on guys. And maybe in years prior, guys would lose their composure and things would snowball. No, it starts from the top down, and that was really evident today.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, Quinn Ewers, whenever it looked like they were in a little bit of a jam, he was seeing the field. He was finding the open receivers. And it was, you know, at one point, Jaden Blue goes out in the second quarter with, I guess, a little bit of a right ankle injury. He was out, but Trey Wisner comes in. Then Jarek Gibson runs in for a 9-yard touchdown run. He continues to look like a a solid option, whether it's short yardage, goal line, or just running the football. But the offensive line, I asked Jake Majors because they pulled Jake Majors and Hayden Connor on that run. And there's Texas pounding the ball on that vaunted Michigan defense. There's one thing we knew, Eric, coming into this game, is that the Michigan defensive line was for real. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore. And Texas was pounding it, running it in the red zone, scoring. They were 4 of 4 in the red zone, 3 touchdowns, 1 field goal. So there were things that we were looking for in this game, Eric. We wanted to see, could the Texas defensive line keep the Michigan offensive line from getting to Texas's linebackers? Check mark for Texas, because Anthony Hill and David Benda dominated this game against the run, 13 tackles combined. The secondary, we wanted to see, are they going to get fooled? Are they going to get, are they going to give up some big plays? I mean, they gave up the big play touchdown at the end, 31-yard pass. But the red zone offense was good, Eric. The third down offense was good. And, yeah, Quinn Ewers, he gives these guys confidence. I asked Andrew Makuba. He said, look, when we go out there with him, we know we get the ball back to him, good things are going to happen.
No, I, again, completely agree. You talk about the guy in Andrew Makuba, what he's brought to the secondary. Steve Sarkisian outlined improved tackling from the safeties, right? And, Steve never wants to really come out and say it last year, but he certainly talked about it throughout spring and fall camp that the defense needed to be better. Pete Kwiatkowski talked about it as well. Defense needs to be better as tacklers. Andrew Makuba has clearly brought that element here to the Longhorn secondary, and also talk about guys like Michael Taft and Jelani McDonald and others who are just more fundamentally sound. Chip, there were plenty of times in this game that, maybe a Michigan player, Michigan receiver, the few times that, the passes really had an opportunity to be advanced upfield, open field tackles. Secondary took care of it, wiped it away. So, again, really agree.
Yeah, and 5 pass breakups. And I believe, let's see, it was Jalen Gilbo, 2 by Andrew Makuba, 1 by Jade Barron, Alfred Collins, the big fella, with a batted pass. Complete game effort. Our man Michael Kern from St. Thomas Aquinas there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the great state of Florida that also gave us Eric Henry. Michael Kern, 3 punts on the day, averaged 39.3 yards. All right, not bad for a freshman handling the big house.
Not bad at all, Chip.
Well, listen, everybody, we're going to find out a little bit more, obviously, about this Texas football team as we move forward. It'll be UTSA next week. But today, they passed all the tests. They had all the answers. It was impressive because the Michigan fans were amped and ready for this game. And Texas turned off the sound in the big house. For Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Thanks so much for listening to the Flagship podcast recap of Texas's 31-12 housing of Michigan in the big house. Till next time, stay safe and keep the faith.